Hello there, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. It's nice to see people popping up from all over the world. Hello, Mason. What a treat to see you. Tammy, nice to see you. Hello, hello. As we get started, I'm just going to let some folks trickle in. We have quite a number of people who registered for today, so I'm very excited about that. But as we do, I encourage you to put on your camera. And I get it, some days we don't want to be on camera. I understand. You'll get more out of today if we put our cameras on and we engage with questions and conversations. So welcome everybody. People again are just trickling in. My name is Nick Kindler, and this is a Communicate with Impact webinar. It's a version that I call Becoming TED Worthy. Not that everyone wants to do a TED Talk or deliver a TED Talk or has one coming up. It's kind of a rarity, to be honest. But there are some elements that we can all embrace when we want to become TED worthy. So I'm going to be sharing that with all of you today, and welcome everybody. I'm really excited. Julie, nice to have you here. Lynn, nice to see you again. It's been a while. Nice to see you. And for those of you that haven't been here before, welcome. It's amazing to have so many new people join us for this September webinar. September, I know, it crept up on me. I don't know about all of you, but it just jumped out of nowhere. Okay, let's get started. I think I've done the polite delay to let people come in. Here's the thing. It's a webinar. We now, after 3 years since COVID of webinars and sitting online, and we know the trick. People are going to come in, they're going to stick around, and they might jump out early. Here's the deal today. I'm going to go as if everyone is with me all the way through. That's the way I always deliver. And I'm recording it, so it'll be available afterwards if you're on our mailing list. And I'm also going to post it online as well. So super happy to have all of you here. As we get started, I'd like you to do the following. If you haven't, Lynn, Mason, Tammy, you guys have crushed it. Julie, I'd love to know what your name is, and if you can, in the Zoom, click on the three dots and then make sure your name is there. If you could put where you are, that would be awesome as well. Now flipping over into the chat, which I have just up over here on my other screen, I would also love to know what you do and your greatest communication challenge. What is your greatest communication challenge? So, if you don't mind dropping that in, and we will get going. We'll get started. And I'm going to say again, nice to see you, Satish. Thank you for being here. I'm going to just reiterate, life is better when we can see each other. So I'd love to see you. And I am going to ask people to take their microphones off at different points. You'll notice I'm not using what is known as Zoom webinar, which means that I can see you and you can see me and we can engage in conversation. So where are you? What do you do? And what is your greatest communication challenge? We have Tammy in Kingston, one of the most beautiful cities in Ontario. And I did graduate from a university from there, so I love it. My son just graduated from Queen's as well, so love that. Tammy, staying on topic. Love it. I mean, and if you can relate to this, by the way, as you're typing your own stuff in, give a thumbs up, because I know that I hear this quite a bit. Mason, who is a friend and colleague who has actually appeared on one of my webinars in the past. Nice to see you from the DC area. I'm always going to give other authors credit where credit is due. Mason is a wonderful author of the book The Chutzpah Effect, Advantage. And so I encourage you to exchange LinkedIn with each other and connect with each other. But if you haven't read his book, it's terrific. Julie is in Guelph. I'm just going to read through this. Julie, you're in Guelph, working with leadership and feeling intimidated. Yeah. Hey, by the way, I've got to do a presentation to a board this evening, and I'm a little bit intimidated by it. So this is universal as well. Louise, nice to see you. RTP data scientist and confidence. Louise, where are you, if you don't mind dropping in where you're from as well, I'd love to see where that is. Aaron, sorry, my apologies. Aaron, to get the entire audience to understand the message intended to be passed on. Mwah. We are not there just to say something. We are there to ensure that that message lives on, and not just lives on, but lives on clearly and can be articulated by others. Louise, North Carolina, thank you for sharing. Mark, you're in Mississauga. You're a trainer and coach at Stay Fresh. Wonderful. And thank you for being here. And where else do we have? Anyone else dropping in? I don't see anything. Chad, you're an event producer in Toronto. Nice to see you. I am a former events creative director and ran an agency for years. So I love and sympathize with what you do. So this is great. Thank you. And you know, this is one of the things that fills my cup. One of the many things that fills my cup is being able to bring leaders from around the world together to talk about communication challenges. For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes explaining why I'm doing this, who I am, what I do. I'm, you know, for those from the US, Mason, you can coach me on this because I'm always a little Canadian about it. I'm like, yeah, this is what I've done. So somebody once encouraged me to put this slide together, which is I'm a TEDx speaker myself. I've coached thousands of leaders from around the world. I've coached dozens of TED and TEDx speakers. I've identified and coached hundreds of Singularity University faculty, which are their speakers, which is kind of like TED meets tech, and it's a global initiative. I helped bring it here to Canada with Oren Berkovich, and then I became the certifying coach, basically certifying all their speakers and faculty around the world. Former board member on Entrepreneurs Organization Toronto, and regional member of the team as well, and faculty at Singularity University, faculty at the Growth Institute like Mason Harris, and I'm also an entrepreneur and consultant. So I work with leaders and businesses around the world, helping them get clear, helping the leaders become better at presenting, communicating, pitching, helping their emerging leaders do the same thing, and then helping organizations create communication alignment so that everyone is speaking the same language. So that's what I do, and that's kind of what Kindler and Company does in a nutshell. I'm also an author. As I mentioned, I'm an author of the book Impact. You can find it on Amazon if you'd like a hard copy. You can find it actually at any online bookstore where books are sold all around the world. But if you wait at the end of the day today, I'm going to send an e-copy, a PDF version, and a link, as well as a whole bunch of tools that I've developed that I use on a daily basis, many times a day, with my clients, helping them become better communicators. So if you stick around, I'm just trying to remember. I do so many of these. I'm trying to remember if this is a 45-minute one, so it's a little shorter. So I'm going to move a little more quickly now. I've done these in 90 minutes. I do them in 3 hours. I do them in 3 days. So we're going to go through this fairly quickly. So the first thing I want to ask you is, how many of you have had an idea that you think could change the world? And I don't want you to be bashful. I want you to be honest. Have you had an idea that, like, oh, if we did that, could we make a difference? And now that you've thought about it, I want you to I actually put it in the chat. Just put in affirmative or negative if you've had an idea. And don't be shy. Aaron, thank you very much. In India, wow, incredible. Thank you for joining us, Aaron. Anyone else? Okay. Izzy, Louise, Mason. Okay, wonderful. And I'm assuming that those of you that are not might be feeling a little shy and trepidatious. So I just want to point out, and no offense to any of you, but 2 out of the 4 or 5 that put yes in, put it all in lowercase. So if you've ever had an idea that have changed the world, I want you to change your answer, not to no, but to yes in all caps. I'd like you to drop it in. Or if you want to say hell yeah, drop that in too. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Louise. Thank you. Here's why this is so important, and this is what gets me up in the morning. What's happening in the world can change what's happening in diverse areas of business, in science, in technology, can change what we see as possible in our worldview in an instant. And I just want to start, I want to share one very quick story, and I'm going to breeze through this. I was working with a leader not too long ago. This was at one of my speakers' retreats. And Jane was the head of energy at Mars. Mars is here in Toronto. It's a innovation hub. University of Toronto, all the hospitals, and it's an incredible hub for new innovations and startups. So Jane was the head of energy, and she basically ran all of the startups under the kind of new energy portfolio. And I invited her to attend one of my multi-day speaker retreats. The idea is you come in with a little bit of an idea and you leave with a finished talk. And so we were having dinner, and I was chatting with Jane, and I said, Jane, I really think you could be a great faculty for Singularity University. And she said, oh, no. You don't want me. You want Tom. Tom is the expert. And I know which Tom she was speaking about, because Tom is an expert in renewable energy and technologies. And so I said, can you just tell me a little bit about your background again? And she said, oh, yeah. And very quickly, she started talking about not just the industry and the technologies that were coming in to change the industry, but the portfolio of companies and the technologies that they were developing. And not just those technologies, but in great detail about how those technologies can actually change and shape the way people use energy and how we impact the planet. And this was all in about 2 minutes. So I turned to her and I said, Jane, you're not any different than Tom. You just haven't put all that into a talk. I can't wait to see what you do. And she looked at me and she got very excited. And she said, okay, let's see what happens. And what happened was she developed a killer talk. And then she became the faculty for Singularity University and traveled the world at conference speaking to leaders about renewable energy, not just in her sector, but in diverse sectors, so that people were aware of the possibilities of what was possible. I'm a big fan of hers and a big fan of what she was able to achieve. And the reason I share this to kick things off is I don't think Jane is any different than any of us. She's an expert, subject matter expert. And all of us are experts in our own field. We just have yet to find the way to articulate and share what we do and how it can have a bigger impact. So today I want to share with you 3 core principles that will help you unpack, and tools that connect to these principles that will help you unpack your idea, lay it on the table, shape it so that you can then share it with others. Before I do it, I do want to share that we have 3 problems. And for those of you that have been here before, you're going to see a couple of things here. This is fundamental to my work. And even the people that I coach on a yearly basis, like ongoing year after year, we repeat these same 3 issues and the same 3 core principles because it's the way we move forward. So the first thing is that all leaders have the same 3 problems. They are very simply, and if you can relate to these, I'd love you to get your hands ready on the chat and just put yes or Y, if it's even faster, Y in return. Are you ready? The first is time. Can you relate? Yes. Oh, well, that was earlier with Uzgi. So if you can relate, just type in yes. I'm interested. Thank you, Sangeeta, and nice to see you. The second, yes, Mason. All right, second is clarity. So, and here's what happens. We don't have enough time to stop and think, and it means that we don't have time to get clear on our messaging and our strategy, which is, the ultimate challenge, especially, I think it's gotten worse since COVID because we jumped from Zoom to Zoom, and if we're lucky, the odd in person, and then back to Zoom or Teams. You get my drift. So if you think that clarity is an issue, and some of you already shared this, please let me know. Sometimes, fair enough, not always, but sometimes. And by the way, this isn't, thanks for the clarification. This isn't all the time. It just means that some of the time we don't have, like, time is more prevalent. Clarity is an issue for many. And what that means is when we don't have time to get clear, our leadership starts to feel less firm on the ground. Our foundation is shaky. So I want to just talk about these 3 core principles quickly, and then I want to share some core things that we can do to make a real difference in our presentations and in our talks and in our day-to-day communication. And as you go along, if you have questions, I just drop them in. I will endeavor to get to them as I speak. As I said, this is a shorter talk today and a shorter webinar, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. The first of the 3 core principles is simplify. And I'm going to pause, and I've made this joke before. It's not even a joke. It's kind of cheeky, but it's true. That this is going to seem really simple, the whole thing that I'm about to share with you. It's not rocket science, but it could help a rocket science communicate their work to a lay person so that they understand it. And with all due respect to rocket scientists who are on the call here. So the first is simplify. How do we simplify that message? And I'm going to share with you some tools and some techniques that you can use to simplify that message. The second is transform. And transform is all about storytelling and language. How do we take that simplified message that's structured in a very coherent way and then bring it to life and elevate it in a way, transform it using storytelling? And the third piece is performance. And performance is not just about techniques, it's about a mindset. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a little while. And what happens? What happens is when we simplify, and this is really important, this is why I think we have to start with simplify, is we provide access to information, content that was previously inaccessible. That's why TED Talks are so great. You can find fascinating subjects that you never would have even come across at the library or in your bookstore unless you just happened to stumble upon them. Then when we tell stories, we can create a deeper level of understanding with our audience. And then finally, when we perform, we make a connection, right? I was doing a little cheat there. That was a dramatic, long, overly long pause. I saw Mason going, okay, yeah, I see the word connection. So, but that's done on purpose, not to be manipulative, but we can connect with people even if they're thousands and thousands of miles away. At the epicenter of this whole concept is impact. That's the word I use. It's the name of my book. It's results, it's outcomes, it's the change you're trying to create. And as leaders, that's what we're trying to do every single day. Create a positive, I hope, change in your business, in your industry, in your world. So let's talk about the first principle. And again, I want to reiterate, if you are here and you're listening, great. If you can come on Zoom on your camera, I'd love to see your face. And if you have questions, drop them into the chat as we go along. So the first thing I want to share with you is about simplifying, and we simplify using structure. And we don't have time to go through the entire canvas that I've developed to help leaders create clarity of their message, but I want to touch on 2 simple tools that you can use right away. Like these are like quick, low-hanging fruit. This is something you can do. The first thing I want to talk about is the burning gap. Often we feel that there's an issue or a challenge. And if you're in a consultancy role, this is really important, right? We need to help our clients understand what the challenge here is. So this is very simple as well, but often forgotten or overlooked, I should say. Now, what does it mean? It means that I just realized no one is seeing my screen. Is that correct? Well, I had such beautiful visuals, everybody. That's incredible. Okay, I just had this notice. It must have popped off when I jumped back on. My apologies. I want to talk about the burning gap. Look at this burning gap visual. So the burning gap is this idea of the bad status quo. Like, this is where we are right now. To the better future. Where could we get to? And it's the distance between that we're going to go together when I talk to you about this. This is where we are. This is where we can get to. So, for example, if we look at the bad status quo of communication and leadership, the bad status quo is something like this: leaders who are unclear, uninspired, unmemorable, or hard to follow. And the better future is leaders who are clear, inspiring, memorable, and easy to follow. It's not complex. It's literally the opposite of what the bad status quo usually. And so when you're thinking about developing a message, a talk, a presentation, you really should start with the bad status quo. Now, I say it's easy, but sometimes identifying the problem is really challenging. And that's the first thing you need to do. So what is the problem? Number two, how bad is it? Like, can you really bring it to life through how you articulate it? And this should feel obvious. And then the better future is, yes, it's the opposite, but it should be, something that people yearn for or want, aspirational, inspiring. But it can't be so inspirational that it's like unachievable. So it has to be relevant, grounded, and most important, it needs to result from exactly what you're talking about. So my burning gap is to help leaders become better communicators, because communication is a gift, and we really, really need to think about it in a different way. Now, how do we then build a strong message? Well, the first thing is we can use what we call the communication canvas. And I'm going to give everybody a version of this in the handouts at the very end. And I'm going to walk through it very quickly, but I'm going to give you the 3 questions to kickstart your canvas at the very beginning in just a moment. And really, it looks like this. You start with your lean in, a story. I did that today. I talked about Laura. I talked about Jane. And then you move into your purpose, and then you develop 3 essential messages, and you deliver 1 essential message. I want to be clear here. Your essential message is reinforcing your purpose, but you're not delivering statistics or facts at this point. That comes in right here. That's where you're delivering your facts and kind of information. And then you're sharing your most important point. What's the most important thing you've already shared? So this is where we're repeating a message again. And that may sound odd, but in communications, there's a saying: tell them again, and then tell them what you told them. Sangeeta, you're nodding your head. So you zigzag across the messaging, and then you get to your close. And I want to point out a couple of things here. You are referring to your lean in or telling a complementary story. You're reiterating your purpose, and then you're ending with a call to action. So you're repeating again. Now, we don't have time to go through this in detail, but I do want to give you the 3 questions that will help you kickstart your purpose and your practice here, your canvas. And these are the 3 questions that actually can simplify any complexity. Really simple questions, not so easy to answer. Okay, they are: what is it? Think of a subject, a topic. How is it different? And in here, how does it move the what forward or forward? I don't know which way is forward for everybody, but how does it move it forward? And then finally, why does it matter? Why does it matter? What's the change once we move that what forward with action? What change in the world is it going to create in your industry, in your business, in your product, whatever it is? So, for example, today is a leadership communication webinar that will help anyone turn their ideas into a talk so they can have greater impact as a leader. I started by thinking about my burning gap. I then developed my what, how, why purpose. Then I developed the rest of the talk. And I'll come back to that last statement I just made in just a moment. But just to clarify, the what provides context. Think of this as what you're going to put in the subject line to your very important customer or stakeholder. You're not going to waste time in that subject line in an email. You're going to be very clear on what you're looking for. The how, differentiation, the power of the action, and there's going to be verbs in here, right? The action and that you help move that forward, and how you do that is different than anybody else. And then finally, why? Why? That's the impact. That's the change in the universe that you're going to create. Now, this, you'll just to revisit this slide here, this, you'll notice it says start here. You cannot successfully deliver a great talk without getting very clear on your purpose first. Then you develop your messages, your support, your most important point, and then you finish with your close. You finish with your close. So I just want to make sure I see some chat actually. I want to make sure. Oh, okay. So some people saying that they can't share their video. My apologies. No worries. Glad to have you here either way. Okay, folks, we're going to keep moving at a brisk pace here, but I do encourage you to share any questions that you may have and on the chat. And this is the major takeaway. Anything can be simplified and made accessible if you use a structure. I'm going to share everybody the tool that you can use to the canvas at the end. You can use your own structure, but use a structure. Break it down. Make it as clear as possible. It will save you and others headaches. Okay. Second principle is transform. And this is my $20 word for, let's call it a $100 word. Why not? For storytelling and language. And it's really interesting. I did a talk for a large conference called the Volcano Summit with all of their speakers, helping them get prepared for a talk just last week. It's a conference in Guatemala that I'm attending and speaking at actually in a few weeks. And they were asking me, so, what is transform? Like, why transform? And I came up with a bunch of myths about speaking. And one of the many myths I came up with in my talk was just share what you know. That's all you need to do. And it's actually not true. And this is why I want to share it with you. It's just share what and how you know it. Share what and how you know it. And this is really a way of talking about stories. When you know something and how you learn something, how you learned the negative influence of social media, for example. Let's just jump on that one for a moment. How did you learn that? Well, with an experience. Was it a personal experience? Was it an experience that a good friend had? Their child had a terrible experience? There's a story there. It's not just a fact. It's not something just that you know, even though you do know it. So stories can translate and stories can transform. And I'm going to very quickly explain why I say transform, because when we tell stories and use emotional language, which is called rhetoric, the human brain goes through transformation. 7 areas of the brain are activated when we tell stories. And so if you've been with me before on my storytelling webinars, you've seen me share this before. I'm going to breeze through this pretty quickly. What's important here is that when I say that they're activated, things like the sensory cortex, which is the area of the brain that perceives texture through touch, when you read to someone an emotional language, it activates the sensory cortex. Just think about that. I can say something to someone and they feel like they have been in the same way that someone has tapped them on the shoulder. When we tell a positive ending to a story, dopamine is released, which helps us feel more positive. When we hear a stressful moment in a story, cortisol is released. That's another hormone, and it helps us to focus. So we have a real opportunity to tell stories, and I want to share with you another tool, a structure that can help you tell better stories. Again, this is going to be shared as a worksheet that you can use moving forward. And it works like this. Once upon a time, there was a character. Every day they had a routine until one day that routine was broken. And because of that, there were consequences. And because of that, there were consequences. And because of that, there were consequences. Until finally they were successful or failed. And then ever since then, they've had a new routine. That is called the story spine. Developed by a playwright, Ken Adams, in the 90s, adopted by this little company called Pixar that uses it to tell every single story, to make sure that every movie they produce is sound in structure. And I want to just be clear that this is not just a fun storytelling structure. It works as a fun storytelling structure. If we had more time, we'd tell stories together during this webinar. I've done that before. I bring people up on stage and on screen to do so. But it can tell your business story, your brand story, your scientific story. I've worked with AstraZeneca, for example, to help it tell the patient story so that every single representative was telling the right story to their doctors, using facts and figures as well. The other great thing about this story spine is that it pulls out the key important elements of a story: environment, characters, conflict, and stakes. These two in the middle here, conflicts and stake, I just want to take a moment. If we don't introduce conflict, number one, and then raise that conflict, the story loses its luster. Just think about that the next time you tell a story, or even think back, and we've all told those stories where it's like, didn't land as well as I hoped, right? The cocktail party where everyone kind of goes, okay, how about that? How about those Blue Jays, or whatever it is. So it's really important to raise have conflict in a story and raise the stakes, and then have a satisfying conclusion. Okay. Again, if you have questions, I'm more than happy to take them, but I'm going to jump along to our, final, just to wrap up on storytelling. A lot more we can cover. As I've mentioned, this is a 45-minute program of a multi-day program, but all content, any message can become more engaging and help people understand it if you embrace storytelling techniques like the story spine. I want to talk about the third and final principle, which is perform. And there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. The first is, unfortunately, the audience is going to form an opinion of you in the first 7 seconds. And by the way, this is pre-COVID, pre-virtual. I think it's become faster. A great friend of mine who runs a visuals technology company, a software, it's incredible, talks about micro frustrations. Has anyone ever felt frustrations around when having these presentations, or watching somebody, or like they just can't get their slides up, or like we've all experienced it? Well, unfortunately, that's an opinion they're making of you. Now, it can change. It can change. That they are going to form it. It can change. It's harder to change. So we want to start prepared. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we have to ask ourselves, how do I want to show up? Like, think about that. Not just, I've got to get my stuff ready. How do I want to show up? So look, I love what I do. I'm passionate about it. I have I'm prepared. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to be ready, know exactly where the camera is. I'm going to put my Zoom where I can see all of you and my camera at the same time. So it's very important that I engage with you. But this is the same if I was in person. If you were in an audience, or if it was a more intimate setting in a boardroom, the same thing. But the more important is the mindset. And this is really the only thing I have time for to talk about, because we can talk about status and gesture and all kinds of body language, facial expression. But I want to leave you with this one, because this is, I think, the most important thing, because you can activate it right away. The mindset of presenting. We have an opportunity when we present, but something happens to many of us. And so it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens a lot. And it's because we feel that there is this person in the audience. Does anyone ever feel that they're being judged when they're presenting? Yeah. I'm going to talk about this for just a moment. There are two judges actually in our minds. One is the judge in the audience, or the judges in the audience. They're all judging me. The second judge, is the judge, like the angel devil in the cartoons. They're like that negative judge sitting on your shoulder. And here's the thing about them: they don't exist. They really don't. They exist as a construct in your mind, a story that you're telling yourself that doesn't serve you. So I want you to remove this idea, and I want you to think about yourself not as a judge, but as a pilot. And for those of you that fly regularly, I know what happens because I fly regularly. You sit down in your seat as a passenger, and the pilot comes on and says, I'm Captain Kindler, and I'm going to take you to Vancouver. I'm going to take you to New York, and we're going to fly at 20,000 feet, and we should be on time. There's going to be some good headwinds. Hope you have a great flight. Not once do I think, I wonder how many times he's taken off or she's taken off. I wonder how many times that pilot has successfully landed. I wonder how many times they've done this. I trust they know what they're doing. And as experts, as leaders, you've been asked to speak because you have an expertise, some knowledge, something to share, to add to the conversation. So you are the pilot. So I want you to think about moving away from that judgment and becoming a pilot and helping the audience, no matter how big or small that audience is, to come in for a landing, even if you're presenting just a small piece. Because what you're doing, and I know you do it for your jobs, I know you do it because you have to sometimes, but it's an act of generosity. It really is. What you're providing to the world is knowledge, and in some cases, ideas. And as I've shared already passionately, those ideas can change the world. So the third principle that I've shared with you is about performance, and all presentations can have an impact if you embrace a mindset of performance. So I want to finish today by sharing one last story, and then I'll share some links with you that you can use. I also want to share something else that we've got coming up, which I'm excited about, which is that I really want you to consider communication as a skill that you can practice. Today I was out on a run, and unfortunately, this is the trail that I run on normally. It's closed. But one day I was out on this trail with my dear friends, and we were running a long distance, and my foot hurt, and I was kind of grumpy. And I turned to my friend and I said, "My foot hurts," kind of like that. And then she said, just without skipping a beat, she said, "It's a gift." We kept running. And I remember I was grumpy. I said, "Oh yeah, today's a gift? Who said that?" And she said, and really quickly, "Master Shifu from Kung Fu Panda." And I said, and I laughed, and I do love the quote, "Today is a gift." And it actually isn't Master Shifu from Kung Fu Panda. It's Eleanor Roosevelt. And the whole quote is, "Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. That is why it's called the present." It's a lovely quote. And beautiful, and I believe it's true. Today is a gift. Every day we get. And I'm going to borrow and paraphrase, and I'm going to say that today is a gift. There's something else that we have that we might take for granted, which is communication. Communication is a gift that we do take for granted because we just do it naturally. But if we take the time, to structure and simplify our communication, if we then wrap it up with stories and language, and then perform it and give it to others, they will, and I'm going to remember somebody said this, they will gladly not just accept it, but they'll pass it on to others. And that's the ultimate gift of communication, when somebody will share what they've heard with others. And that's really what we are trying to achieve in our businesses. As leaders, if we're running large businesses or running teams, we want people to remember and activate what we have spoken about. I want to share a couple of links with you, and we have 5 minutes left. Can I ask everyone, is it okay if I just share with you something that's coming up, and stick around for just 2 minutes, and I'll share this quickly, and then I'll get over to the. There was something that I created in COVID. Called, I wrote my book, and then I created an online program, and I did multiple cohorts of something called the Impact Accelerator. And about a year or so ago, I paused it. I got too busy running my coaching program, my one-on-ones, and my workshops. And then we created a consulting line that grew as well. And then I started doing group coaching, and I realized how much I love doing it, and the power of it. Like it's a really powerful thing. So I'm launching November 1st, the Impact Accelerator. And I'm just going to spend 1 more minute talking about it. The Impact Accelerator is a group cohort. I only take 10 people. That's it. 10 people. We meet every month, and we run through kind of workshops like this for a little longer. We go for 90 minutes, and we touch on each one of those principles: simplify, transform, and perform. We spend 6 months in this cohort together. So every month for 6 months, we meet and we develop our talks. We meet once for a workshop, and then I do an open office hours once a month for 1 hour. So there's 2 times to connect every month. There's also the book, all of the handouts, and all of the videos on a learning portal that are included, which are great. The power of it is the group coaching and the collaboration. And we set documents so that everybody can see where everybody is at. So there's kind of a peer encouragement, if you will, as we move along. So on November 1st, we launch this. And what I've done is I'm going to share 2 things. The first is, if you're interested in learning more about it, you can sign up here just by using your phone to download the strategy session. And then we can chat with you about whether or not it makes sense for you to do that communication, that Impact Accelerator program. We've had dozens and dozens of leaders go through the program. It's a program I'm very proud of, and I forgot one really important thing. At the end of the program, we host a webinar like this with all of the speakers, and we host our own virtual TED Talk where everyone gets to present. So I should have added that. So this is something that is of interest to you, that you've thought about, that you'd like to know more about. Just download the link or use the link here to connect with our team, and we can share more about it. Finally, as I've said, and thanks for letting me share that, everybody, I wanted to share this. This is a copy of the book and handouts, including the story spine, the purpose practice, as well as the canvas. So you have access to all of those pieces. And I think I've nailed it on time. If anybody has any questions, I can stick around for a couple of minutes. Otherwise, I want to thank all of you for being here. Not only do I want to thank you, I want to encourage you to come back, because next month, we're going to be doing a whole new webinar, something brand new. We've got a whole bunch of new developing workshops we've developed, and we'll be sharing little pieces of each one of those as we go through the year. So thank you. You're most welcome, Erin. It's nice to have you here. Like that. That's good. And if there's anything I can share or any questions that people have, I'm happy to stick around. You can come off mute and ask away. You're very welcome all. Thank you, Mason. Appreciate it. Nice. Thank you, Tammy. You're most welcome. All right, everybody. Lovely. It looks like no questions. So thanks very much, everyone. But if you do have questions, I do have a few minutes. If you want to stick around, I'll take any questions at all. Dorley, yes, there will be this. I believe this was recorded and it'll be shared in our mail out. So if you're on our mailing list, you'll definitely get a link to that as well. All right. Thanks, everybody. Awesome to see everyone. And thank you again for your time. We'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.